I am Kayla Preston, 25, and literally last weekend, my rep as the mom who always keeps it together for my 6-year-old son, Max? Yeah, it totally backfired. The fragile peace I'd worked my butt off to maintain with my parents despite their endless judgment blew up into a full-on family meltdown in the middle of nowhere. A dusty gas station off a desert highway. My parents, with their polished smiles and bank accounts they love to flaunt, demanded I hand over the little savings I'd scraped together for Max's future, claiming it was owed for their past support. When I clapped back, refusing to let them bleed me dry, the air went dead silent. "You're an ungrateful leech," my mother hissed, her manicured nails digging into her purse as Max clung to my leg, confused. My father just stared, cold as stone, while the gas station clerk pretended not to hear. But here's the tea. Their cruelty didn't break me, it lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying journey you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost unreal what I'd do once that desert dust settled. It started with the hum of tires on asphalt. The three of us, me, Max, and my parents, crammed into their sleek SUV for what was supposed to be a family bonding road trip. Max was in the back, his tiny fingers clutching a worn-out dinosaur toy, humming softly to himself. I kept my eyes on the endless stretch of sun-scorched road, trying to ignore the weight of my parents' expectations. They'd been hounding me about money for weeks, ever since I'd mentioned a small emergency fund I'd built for Max. To them, it wasn't mine, it was theirs, a debt for the roof they'd grudgingly let us sleep under after I left Max's dead. I could feel the tension building, like a storm cloud ready to burst. My mother's voice cut through the silence, sharp as a knife. "Kayla, you can't keep living like a charity case," she said, not even glancing back from the passenger seat. Her pearl earrings glinted in the sunlight, a reminder of the life she thought I'd never deserve. "That money you're hoarding could help us expand the business." My father grunted in agreement, his knuckles tightening on the steering wheel. I bit the inside of my cheek, tasting the familiar sting of their dismissal. Max's humming stopped, and I caught his wide, anxious eyes in the rearview mirror. I forced a smile for him, brushing his sandy hair back, but my stomach churned. "I'm not hoarding," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It's for Max, school, emergencies, a future." My mother scoffed, twisting in her seat to face me. Her eyes, the same hazel as mine, held no warmth. "A future? You're a single mother with no job, Kayla. What future?" The words landed like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I'd heard worse from her. Max's hand tightened around his toy, and I slid my arm around him, pulling him close. My parents didn't know about the nights I'd spent teaching myself car repair from YouTube videos, fixing neighbors' cars for cash under the table. They didn't know I was building something real. The gas station loomed ahead, a run-down oasis in the desert. My father pulled in, tires crunching gravel, and I thought we'd just refuel and keep going. But the argument flared again as we stepped out into the blistering heat. "You owe us," my father said, his voice low and final, like he was passing a sentence. He leaned against the SUV, arms crossed, his expensive watch glinting. "We've carried you long enough." Max tugged at my hand, his small voice asking for a snack, but I couldn't look away from my father's glare. I stood taller, my fingers curling into fists. "I don't owe you my son's future," I said, my voice shaking but firm. My mother laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "You're nothing without us." She gestured to the empty desert around us, as if it proved her point. Max pressed closer, his dinosaur toy digging into my thigh. I wanted to scream, to tell them how I'd clawed my way through sleepless nights and endless judgment to keep Max safe. But before I could, my father's face hardened. "Get out," he said, pointing to the road. "You're done." I thought he meant the conversation, but then he climbed into the driver's seat, my mother following without a glance back. The engine roared to life, and I stood frozen, Max's hand in mine, as they peeled out, leaving us in a cloud of dust. The reality hit like a punch. They'd abandoned us. Me, their daughter, and Max, their grandson, left with nothing but a backpack and a half-empty water bottle. The clerk watched from the gas station window, his expression unreadable. Max's lip trembled, but he didn't cry. "Mommy, are they coming back?" he asked, his voice small. I knelt down, forcing my fear into a tight ball in my chest, and hugged him. "We don't need them, buddy," I whispered, my lips brushing his forehead. But as the desert sun beat down, I wasn't sure I believed it. All I knew was that spark inside me was growing, a fire they'd never see coming. The dust settled slowly, like a veil lifting on memories I'd buried deep. As Max and I stood there, alone under the relentless sun, my mind raced back to all the times my parents had made me feel invisible, their indifference carving scars that never fully healed. It wasn't just this abandonment, it was a lifetime of being overlooked, my struggles as a single mom dismissed while they paraded their own hollow victories. I clutched Max's hand tighter, his small fingers sticky with sweat, and let the flashbacks wash over me, each one a sharp reminder of why that spark inside was turning into a blaze. I remembered the day Max was born, 6 years ago, in that sterile hospital room. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I pushed through the pain, sweat matting my hair to my forehead. No one was there holding my hand. His father had bailed months earlier, and my parents? They'd sent a text. "Congratulations, busy with the store opening." I'd gripped the bed rails, knuckles white, breathing through contractions that felt like they were tearing me apart. When Max finally arrived, his cry piercing the air, I held him close, his tiny body warm against my chest. Tears streamed down my face, not just from exhaustion but from the ache of doing it all alone. I called them that night, voice hoarse, hoping for some shred of pride. My mother answered, her tone clipped. "A boy? That's nice. We're in the middle of inventory." Click, no visit, no card. Meanwhile, they were toasting their new boutique, posting photos online of champagne flutes clinking, their smiles wide and fake. I scrolled through those pictures in the hospital bed, Max nursing quietly, and felt the sting of being erased from their narrative. Then there was the time, about 2 years later, when I landed my first real job after months of dead-end interviews. Max was toddling around our cramped apartment, his laughter echoing off the walls as I juggled diaper changes and resume tweaks. I'd practiced in the mirror, smoothing my thrift store blouse, rehearsing answers with a forced smile. The interview went well. The manager nodded approvingly as I explained my gap in employment, how I'd been raising Max single-handedly. When I got the call offering me the cashier position at the local grocery, I punched the air, Max mimicking me with giggles. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, a step toward independence. I rushed to tell my parents, driving over with Max in his car seat, his chubby hands waving a drawing he'd made. They were in the living room, my father polishing his golf trophies, symbols of his successful weekends schmoozing clients. "Guess what?" I said, breathless, setting Max down. He waddled over, offering the crayon scribbles. My mother glanced up from her magazine, eyebrows arched. "What now, Kayla?" I told them about the job, words tumbling out, my hands gesturing excitedly. My father snorted, not even looking at the drawing. "Cashier? That's your big news?" He set the trophy down with a clink, wiping his hands on a cloth. "We're closing a deal on the new warehouse expansion. That's real achievement." My mother folded the magazine neatly, her lips pursing. "Don't get ahead of yourself. You'll probably quit in a week." Max's face fell as they ignored his gift, and I scooped him up, my cheeks burning. We left without another word, their celebration of their business milestone echoing in my ears like mockery. Flash forward to last year, when Max started kindergarten. I'd saved every penny from side gigs, babysitting, odd cleaning jobs, to buy him a new backpack and shoes. His eyes lit up when he saw them, hugging me tight, his little arms squeezing. The first day I walked him to school, my heart swelling as he waved goodbye, brave but teary. That evening I baked cookies, the kitchen smelling of vanilla, wanting to mark the milestone. I invited my parents over, hoping maybe this time they'd see. They arrived late, my mother complaining about traffic, her designer bag slung over her shoulder. Max ran to show them his finger painting from class, colors smeared across the paper. "Look, Grandma," he beamed, holding it up. She took it gingerly as if it might stain her blouse and set it aside without a glance. "Cute," she said flatly. My father checked his watch. "We're heading to the awards gala tonight. Our company got nominated for Best Retailer." They launched into stories of their accomplishments, the plaque they'd receive, the networking opportunities. I sat there, stirring my coffee, the spoon clinking against the mug, feeling the weight of their disregard. "Max started school today," I interjected softly, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother waved a hand. Oh right, good for him. No questions about his day, no hugs. They left early, leaving behind the scent of perfume and a pit in my stomach. Max picked up his ignored painting, his shoulders slumping, and I pulled him into my lap, whispering apologies. These moments piled up, each one a brick in the wall of invisibility they'd built around me. Even when I pleaded for help, like the time our apartment flooded, water soaking everything, and I called them in tears, Max coughing from the damp. We need a place to stay, just for a bit, I'd said, my voice cracking. My father sighed over the phone. We're remodeling the guest room for clients, figure it out. They were too busy flaunting their latest vacation photos, beaches and cocktails, while I mopped floors and dried out Max's toys. My hands would tremble as I hung up, nails bitten to the quick, the rejection sinking in like cold water. Now, stranded in the desert, those memories fueled the fire. Max kicked at a pebble, his shoe scuffing the dirt, and I knelt to his level, wiping sweat from his brow. It's okay, sweetie, I murmured, though my throat tightened. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching, but inside I felt clarity sharpening. They'd never celebrated my wins, the late nights studying mechanics, the secret fixes that paid our bills. They'd praised their own superficial successes, but ignored my resilience. As the gas station clerk finally emerged, offering water with a hesitant smile, I realized this abandonment was just the culmination. My fists clenched, nails digging into palms. I wasn't invisible. I was unbreakable. And soon they'd see that. The clerk's water bottle was cool against my palm, a small mercy in the baking heat, and as I passed it to Max, watching him gulp it down with desperate sips, that unbreakable feeling solidified into something sharper, a memory of the night everything shifted for me. It was about a year ago, in the dim glow of my laptop screen, when the aha hit like a bolt, changing the course of my hidden world. I'd been scrolling mindlessly after putting Max to bed, his soft snores filtering from the next room, my body aching from another dead-end shift. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the fridge, and I was staring at a video thumbnail. Fix your own car brakes in 10 steps. It wasn't random. I'd been nursing our old junker of a car, the one that sputtered and whined, eating up what little cash I had on repairs. Mechanics charged an arm and a leg, and I couldn't afford it anymore. My fingers hovered over the mouse, hesitating, then clicked. As the video played, the guy's voice calm and methodical, showing tools and steps, something clicked inside me too. I could do this, I thought, my heart quickening. It wasn't just about saving money. It was about control, about not begging my parents for scraps. I paused the video, leaning back in the creaky chair, my hands trembling slightly. This was it, the spark. No more invisibility. I'd build something they couldn't touch. That night stretched into dawn, my eyes burning from the screen's glare, but I couldn't stop. I replayed the video, jotting notes on a crumpled napkin. Calipers, rotors, pads. Max stirred once, calling out in his sleep, and I tiptoed to tuck him in, his blanket twisted around his legs. Back at the computer, I dove deeper, searching for free tutorials, forums where hobbyists shared tips. My nails tapped the keyboard rhythmically, a nervous habit as doubt crept in. Who am I kidding? I'm no mechanic, I muttered, rubbing my temples. But then I thought of Max's future, of breaking free from my parents' shadow. I stood up, pacing the small living room, socks whispering on the worn carpet. The aha wasn't just inspiration, it was defiance. I grabbed my phone, ordering a basic tool set from a discount site. Screwdrivers, wrenches, pliers, using the last of my grocery money. It arrived 2 days later, the box heavy in my arms as I lugged it up the stairs. Max trailing behind, curious. What's that, Mommy? He asked, peeking inside. I ruffled his hair. Tools for fixing things, buddy. He nodded, content with that, and I hid the box under my bed, my secret starting to take shape. The struggle kicked in hard after that, a grind that tested every ounce of my resolve. Nights blurred into one another, me hunched over the laptop after Max's bedtime stories, his favorite book about trucks, dog-eared from repetition. I'd read to him, my voice steady, but my mind racing ahead to the videos. Once he was asleep, I'd pull out the tools, practicing on scrap parts I'd scavenged from junkyards, old brake pads, rusty bolts. My hands blistered at first, skin raw from gripping wrenches too tight, and I'd wince, wrapping them in bandages from the bathroom cabinet. One evening, trying to loosen a stubborn nut on a practice rotor, The wrench slipped, slicing my knuckle. Blood welled up, hot and sticky, and I bit back a curse, tears stinging my eyes. "Why am I doing this?" I whispered, sinking to the floor, back against the wall. The apartment felt smaller, walls closing in, and I thought of quitting, of crawling back to my parents. But then Max's laugh echoed in my memory, from earlier that day when we'd played tag in the park, his joy pure and untainted. I bandaged the cut, the gauze rough against my skin, and picked up the wrench again. Progress was slow, hours spent decoding error codes, memorizing engine diagrams, my notebook filling with sketches and notes, pages crinkled from spilled coffee. Balancing it with motherhood amplified the intensity, every moment a tightrope walk. Mornings I'd drag myself out of bed after 3 hours of sleep, eyes gritty to make Max breakfast, oatmeal in his dinosaur bowl, stirring it while stifling yawns. He'd chatter about school, spoon clinking against the bowl, and I'd nod, forcing energy I didn't have. Afternoons were for my part-time job, scanning groceries with mechanical smiles, my mind replaying torque specs. Evenings, after dinner, simple meals like pasta from a box, I'd study while Max colored at the table, his crayons scratching paper. "Look, Mommy, a car," he'd say, holding up a drawing. I'd praise it, heart swelling, then dive back into videos, pausing to explain simplified versions to him. "This is how engines work," I'd say, pointing to the screen, his eyes wide. But the exhaustion built, waves crashing. One night, I dozed off mid-video, head thudding against the desk, waking to Max shaking my shoulder. "Mommy, it's morning." Panic surged. I'd overslept, rushing to get him ready, my hands fumbling with his shoelaces. Guilt gnawed at me, sharp as the tools in my kit. Was I neglecting him for this? I hugged him extra tight at school drop-off, his backpack bumping my leg, vowing to do better. Yet, the triumphs started small, building like momentum in a well-oiled machine. My first real fix was the neighbor's sedan, Mrs. Garcia's, which wouldn't start. She'd knocked on my door, wringing her hands, gray hair frizzed from worry. "Kayla, you know anyone cheap?" she'd asked, voice trembling. I hesitated, then offered. "Let me look." Heart pounding, I popped the hood, tools clinking in my bag. It was the battery cables, corroded. I cleaned them, fingers steady despite the nerves, and it roared to life. Mrs. Garcia's face lit up, hugging me fiercely. "You're a lifesaver." She paid me $20, cash warm in my palm. I stared at it later, alone, a grin splitting my face. More came, fixing leaks, changing oil, word spreading quietly. Cash trickled in, hidden in a jar under the sink, growing. I upgraded tools, bought books, my confidence swelling. Max noticed. "Mommy's fixing cars now," he'd say proudly to his toys. The massive success was internal at first, the knowledge that I was capable, that my hands could create stability. But it peaked when I repaired our own car, the one that had stranded us twice. Under the streetlight one night, jacket zipped against the chill, I replaced the alternator, sweat beading despite the cold. It started smoothly, purring, and I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, tears blurring the dashboard. This was mine, hidden from my parents, a fortress of skill. Back in the desert, as the clerk chatted awkwardly about calling for help, that secret pulsed in me like a lifeline. Max leaned against my leg, his head heavy, and I stroked his hair, the strands damp. The sun was a hammer, but inside I was forged stronger. They'd abandoned us, but I had this, skills that would carry us forward. Little did I know, rescue was minutes away, but in that wait the secret solidified my resolve. As the clerk fumbled with his phone, mumbling about spotty signal in the desert, I let my mind drift back again, this time to just days before this nightmare unfolded. The eve of that cursed family road trip. My secret mechanical skills were humming beneath the surface, poised to unlock real doors, but there I was, packing bags in our tiny apartment, dread knotting my stomach like a tangled hose. Max was bouncing on the bed, his pajamas rumpled, clutching his dinosaur toy as if it could shield him from the tension I couldn't hide. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second amplifying my reluctance. I'd spent the morning fixing a neighbor's carburetor in secret, grease still faint under my nails despite scrubbing, and that small victory, cash tucked away, felt like a lifeline. But now, facing this bonding trip my parents had insisted on, it all seemed fragile. They framed it as a generous getaway. But I knew better. It was another chance to lord their success over me, to pick at my finances until I bled concessions. I zipped Max's backpack shut, the sound sharp, and sank onto the edge of the bed, my hands pressing into the mattress for support. The invitation had come via text 2 weeks earlier, my mother's words clipped. Road trip to the canyon, family time, be ready Friday. No question, just command. I'd stared at the screen, thumb hovering over reply, my coffee cooling on the counter. Max was at school, the apartment quiet except for the drip of the faucet I'd meant to fix. Part of me wanted to refuse, to text back, no thanks, and block them, but the guilt twisted. They were his grandparents after all, and Max lit up at the mention of adventure. Plus, my savings jar was growing from those under-the-table repairs, but it wasn't enough yet to cut ties completely. I typed okay, hit send, and immediately regretted it, my fingers clenching the phone case until it creaked. Now, on the eve, that decision weighed heavy. I stood up, pacing the threadbare carpet, toes curling into the fibers. The apartment smelled of the spaghetti I'd made for dinner, sauce stains on the plate still in the sink. I washed them mechanically, suds bubbling under my hands, hot water reddening my skin. Each scrub was a distraction from the anxiety bubbling inside. What if they pushed too far this time? My expertise was on the cusp. I'd been eyeing online ads for mechanic apprenticeships, even emailed one shop anonymously about entry-level work. A life-changing opportunity felt close. Tools in my reach. But this trip loomed like a storm. Max tugged at my shirt hem, his eyes bright. "Mommy, are we gonna see rocks? Big ones?" He hopped from foot to foot, his energy a stark contrast to my churning gut. I forced a smile, kneeling to his level, my knees popping softly. "Yeah, buddy, huge rocks, and maybe some stars at night." I ruffled his hair, strands soft under my palm, but my mind raced to the tension I sensed brewing. My parents had been dropping hints about money for months, subtle at first, like, "How's that fund coming?" during calls, their voices laced with expectation. Lately it was bolder. My father emailing about family investments, my mother calling to complain about their business costs, implying I should contribute. I dodged, changing subjects, but the pressure mounted. As I packed, stuffing extra socks into Max's bag, his favorites with the truck patterns, I replayed our last conversation. It was yesterday, over the phone, my mother sighing dramatically. "Kayla, this trip will be good for us, but we need to talk about responsibilities." Her tone dripped with that familiar condescension, making my jaw clench. I gripped the phone tighter, nail-digging into the case. "Sure, Mom?" Hang up. Deep breath, but the knot tightened. Evening deepened, streetlights flickering on outside the window, casting shadows across the room. I bathed Max, the tub water splashing as he played with his bath toys, bubbles clinging to his arms. "Vroom, vroom," he mimicked, pushing a plastic car through the foam. I watched, sponge in hand, gently washing his back, but my thoughts swirled. My hidden skills were my edge. Last week, I'd fixed a transmission for the guy down the hall, diagnosing it from a YouTube deep dive, tools clinking in the parking lot under cover of dusk. He'd paid $50, eyes wide with gratitude, and I'd stashed it away, the jar now half full. It was on the brink. One more big fix. And I could afford certification courses, maybe even approach that local garage for real work. Opportunities whispered, independence, stability for Max. But this road trip? It screamed chaos. I dried Max off, towel soft against his skin, and helped him into pajamas, buttons slipping through my fingers. He yawned, rubbing his eyes with balled fists, and I carried him to bed, his weight warm in my arms. Tucking him in, blanket pulled to his chin, I kissed his forehead, lingering. "Sweet dreams, my brave boy." He mumbled something about dinosaurs, eyelids fluttering shut. Alone in the living room, I folded laundry on the couch, shirts stacking neatly, the repetitive motion calming my nerves slightly. But the dread persisted, a low hum. I checked my email on my phone, screen glowing blue, and there it was, and reply from the mechanic shop. "Interested in your skills. Come by after hours for a chat." My heart skipped, fingers trembling as I read it twice. This was it, the verge of something life-changing. I could picture it. Walking in, tools in hand, proving myself. But then my parents' SUV would pull up tomorrow morning, horn honking impatiently, and I'd have to shove this down, play the dutiful daughter. I set the phone aside, rubbing my face, palms pressing into eyelids until stars burst. The tension over money was palpable. They'd been auditing my life lately, questioning every expense as if my single mom's struggles were a burden they funded. "You need to contribute," my father had said last month. his voice gruff over dinner at their house, fork clinking against plate. I'd nodded, swallowing pride with my food, but inside, resentment simmered. Now, packing the last items, a water bottle, snacks for Max, I felt the eruption coming. My hands shook slightly, zipping my own bag, knuckles brushing the fabric. I lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling cracks, sleep evading me. The fan whirred overhead, stirring warm air, and I turned on my side, pillow bunching under my cheek. Thoughts looped, the trip's itinerary, drives through desert, stops at viewpoints, but underlined with their agenda. Money talks always. I'd overheard them once, whispering about cutting losses if I didn't step up. My fist clenched the sheet, fabric twisting, but my secret buoyed me. Those nights wrenching bolts, grease staining my clothes, had built resilience. As dawn crept in, light filtering through curtains, I rose, brewing coffee, mug warm in hands. Max woke soon, patting in with sleepy hugs, and I dressed him, buttons fastening slowly. The honk came at 8 sharp, my parents' SUV idling outside. I grabbed the bags, shoulders tensing, and led Max out, his hand in mine. "Here we go," I murmured, locking the door with a click. Climbing in, the leather seats cool, my mother glanced back with a tight smile. "Ready for fun?" I nodded, but the chaos simmered, ready to boil. Little did I know it would explode sooner than expected, stranding us in that desert where everything would shift. Back in the present, the clerk's voice pulled me out. "Help's on the way, ma'am," and I nodded, the Eve's reluctance fresh fuel for my resolve. Max's head rested heavier on my leg, and I held him close, the road trip's start a bitter memory, now eclipsed by survival. Survival felt distant in that moment, with the clerk retreating back inside the gas station, leaving Max and me to the mercy of the fading light. But the bitter memory of the road trip's start clawed its way forward, demanding to be relived. As I stroked Max's hair, his breathing steady against my thigh, I sank deeper into the recall. The SUV's engine rumbling to life once more in my mind, pulling us onto the highway where the gauntlet truly began. The leather seat stuck to my legs in the air-conditioned chill, a stark contrast to the desert heat outside, and I shifted uncomfortably, buckling Max in beside me. He fiddled with his seatbelt clip, clicking it open and closed, a small distraction from the heavy silence that settled as my father accelerated, the landscape blurring into sandy monotones. My mother adjusted her sunglasses, the frames expensive and oversized, and turned slightly in her seat, her gaze landing on me like a judgment. "So, Kayla," she started, her voice syrupy with false interest, "how's that little job of yours going? Still scanning groceries like it's a career?" Her lips curved into what she probably thought was a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes, which flicked to Max briefly before dismissing him. I swallowed, my throat dry despite the water bottle I'd packed, now wedged in the cup holder. My fingers twisted the hem of my shirt, the fabric bunching under my nails. "It's fine," I replied, keeping my tone neutral, eyes fixed on the passing cacti. Max glanced up at me, sensing the shift, and I squeezed his knee gently, a silent reassurance. But she wasn't done. She never was. "Fine, that's all? We thought you'd aim higher by now. Remember how we paid for those community college classes?" She laughed lightly, a tinkling sound that grated like nails on chalkboard. My father chimed in, his voice booming from the front, hands steady on the wheel. "Yeah, what happened to that? Dropped out after 1 semester. Waste of money." He shook his head, the rearview mirror catching his disapproving frown. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, not from the sun streaming through the window, but from the familiar shame they wielded like a weapon. Max's toy dinosaur slipped from his lap, thumping to the floor mat, and he bent to retrieve it, his movements small and careful, as if afraid to draw attention. The questions kept coming, a relentless barrage disguised as conversation. My mother pivoted, crossing her legs with a swish of her linen pants. "And Max, how's he doing in that public school? We could have helped with private, if you'd just asked nicely." Her emphasis on nicely hung in the air, implying I'd been anything but. I bit my lip, tasting the faint metallic tang, and glanced at Max, who was now hugging his toy close, eyes downcast. "He's doing great," I said, forcing enthusiasm. "Top of his class in reading." But she waved a hand, rings flashing. "Reading? That's basic. Our friends' grandkids are in gifted programs already. You need to push him more." "Push him?" Like they pushed me, into corners of doubt? My fist clenched in my lap, knuckles whitening. but I said nothing, staring at the dashboard clock ticking away the miles. My father grunted, changing lanes with a jerk that made Max jolt. Speaking of pushing, when are you going to get a real job? Something that pays enough so you're not always hinting for handouts. His words landed heavy, and I felt Max tense beside me, his little hand reaching for mine. I interlaced our fingers, his palms sweaty, and whispered, "It's okay." Though it wasn't. They layered on the backhanded compliments, each one a thorn wrapped in silk. "You're so resilient, Kayla," my mother said, tilting her head sympathetically. "Living in that tiny apartment, it's almost inspiring how you make do." Inspiring? It was survival, scraped together from shifts and secrets they knew nothing about. I nodded faintly, my free hand pressing against the door handle as if I could escape. The AC vent blew cold air on my face, drying my eyes, but I blinked back the sting. Max murmured something about being hungry, his voice barely audible over the engine hum, and I rummaged in the backpack for a granola bar, wrapper crinkling as I handed it to him. He nibbled slowly, crumbs falling onto his shorts, and I brushed them away, my touch gentle amid the storm. "Look at you, playing house," my father added, chuckling. "But seriously, at your age I was already managing the store. What's your plan? Keep relying on us forever?" The us was laced with resentment, as if my existence was a ledger in the red. My stomach twisted, the granola bar I'd eaten earlier sitting like lead. The highway stretched endless, mirages shimmering on the asphalt, mirroring the illusion of family unity they'd dragged us into. My mother pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos, holding it up for me to see. "See this, our latest vacation. You could join someday if you sorted your finances." The screen showed beaches, her in a hat, smiling widely, a life I wasn't part of. I murmured agreement, my voice hollow, while inside, anger simmered. My nails dug into my palm, leaving crescent marks. Max finished his bar, licking his fingers, and asked quietly, "Grandma, can I see?" She hesitated, then passed the phone back, her fingers brushing mine coldly. He oohed at the pictures, innocent wonder in his eyes, but she snatched it back soon after. "Don't drop it," she snapped, though he hadn't. I pulled him closer, my arm around his shoulders, feeling his heartbeat quicken. As miles ticked by, the contempt escalated subtly, questions probing deeper. "Ever think about dating again? Someone stable maybe," my mother mused, applying lip gloss in the visor mirror, the tube clicking shut. "Might help with the bills." The implication that I was a burden alone stung sharp. My father nodded. "Yeah, instead of whatever mess you left with that ex." They didn't know the half. The nights I'd cried after he left, Max Kalicki in my arms. I shifted, crossing my arms, the seatbelt digging into my shoulder. "I'm focusing on Max," I said firmly, but she rolled her eyes. "Noble, but impractical. We're not a bank, you know." The word bank echoed, their favorite jab at my dependence. Max's eyes darted between us, confusion furrowing his brow, and I forced a smile, tickling his side lightly to distract him. He giggled softly, but it faded quick. A rest stop sign appeared and my father signaled pulling off. "Gas and stretch," he announced, the SUV slowing. As we parked, the questions paused but the wait lingered. I unbuckled Max, helping him out, his sneakers crunching gravel. The air was hot, waving off the pavement, and I held his hand tight. Inside the station, my mother bought coffees, handing me one with a patronizing pat. "Here, you look tired." Tired from enduring them. We piled back in, the barrage resuming as we merged onto the road. "Seriously, Kayla, that savings you mentioned, why hoard it? Family helps family." My mother's voice sharpened, the real agenda surfacing. I gripped the armrest, plastic creaking under my fingers. The desert blurred, but the contempt was crystal clear, each word eroding my patience like wind on sand. In the present, as a distant engine hummed, perhaps help arriving, the memory's sting sharpened my resolve. Max stirred, mumbling, and I whispered comfort, the gauntlet's echoes fueling the fire within. That distant hum grew louder, a truck's engine cutting through the desert quiet, but before hope could fully bloom, my mind yanked me back to the road trip's brutal peak, the stop where the gauntlet of contempt exploded into something irreversible. The SUV had pulled into that very gas station hours earlier, tires crunching the same gravel now under my feet, the air thick with unspoken rage as we all stepped out. Max hopped down first, his hand slipping into mine, sticky from the heat, while my parents stretched their legs, my father rolling his shoulders with a grunt. The sun hammered down, waves of heat rising from the pavement, and I guided Max toward the shade of the awning, his sneakers scuffing dust. But the conversation didn't pause. It ignited, my mother's voice slicing through the air like a whip. "You think we're made of money, Kayla? That savings of yours? It's time you paid us back." She planted her hands on her hips, her sundress fluttering in the hot breeze, eyes narrowed behind those oversized sunglasses. I froze midway to the door, Max tugging gently, confused by the shift. My father joined in, leaning against the SUV's hood, the metal hot under his palms. He winced but didn't move. "We've bailed you out too many times. Rent, food, that deadbeat's mess, enough." His words were clipped, each one a stone thrown. I felt my pulse quicken, blood rushing in my ears, drowning the distant highway hum. Max's grip tightened, his nails digging into my skin, and I knelt briefly, whispering, "Go inside and get a candy, sweetie. Mommy's talking." He hesitated, eyes wide, but nodded, scampering toward the clerk's counter, bell jingling as he entered. Standing again, I faced them, my back straightening despite the knot in my gut. "I never asked for bailouts," I said, voice steady but rising. "You offered, then held it over my head like a noose." My mother scoffed, stepping closer, her perfume cloying in the heat. "Offered? We sacrificed for you, and this is the thanks, hoarding cash while we struggle?" Struggle? Their boutique was thriving, vacations yearly. My fists balled at my sides, nails biting palms, the pain grounding me. The argument escalated, voices layering like storm clouds. My father pushed off the hood, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "You're 25, Kayla. Act like it. Hand over that money or we're done carrying you." "Carrying me? I'd scrape by on my own, secret fixes funding what they wouldn't." I shook my head, strands of hair sticking to my damp neck. "It's for Max. His school, his future, not your business expansions." My mother's face twisted, lips pursing tight. "Max, he's our grandson, but you're poisoning him with your failures." The word failures hit like a gut punch, my breath hitching. I glanced through the gas station window. Max was pointing at candies, the clerk smiling down, but the sight fueled me. "My failures? Like raising him alone while you ignore us?" My voice cracked, louder now, drawing the clerk's glance. My father stepped between us, his shadow long in the sun. "Watch your tone, we've given you everything. But if you won't contribute..." He trailed off, eyes cold, calculating. They pressed harder, the formal disowning building brick by brick. My mother crossed her arms, rings glinting harshly. "We've talked about this. If you don't transfer that money now, right here, we're cutting you off. No more help, no more family." Her words hung heavy, the desert wind whistling through. I pulled out my phone instinctively, screen glaring in the light, but my fingers hovered, trembling. "You can't mean that." My father nodded, slow and deliberate. "We do. Change your number, your name if you want. You're out. Out, like trash discarded." My chest tightened, breath shallow, as memories flashed. Birthdays ignored, pleas dismissed. Max emerged then, clutching a lollipop, wrapper crinkling in his fist. "Mommy?" His voice small, he sensed the storm. I scooped him up, his weight a anchor, legs wrapping around my waist. "It's fine," I lied, but my voice wavered. The verdict landed cold and final, their decision crystallizing in the heat. My mother snatched the car keys from my father, jangling them. "Get in if you're complying, otherwise." She gestured to the empty desert, vast and unforgiving. My father's jaw set, a muscle twitching. "Last chance, Kayla, family or nothing." "Nothing? After years of their conditional love?" Rage surged, hot as the sun. "I choose Max, keep your money." The words escaped before I could stop them, my arms tightening around him. My mother's eyes widened, then hardened. "Fine. You're disowned. Don't call, don't come back." She climbed into the SUV, door slamming with a thud that echoed. My father lingered, hand on the handle. "You brought this on yourself." He got in, engine roaring to life, dust kicking up as they reversed. I stood rooted, Max burying his face in my shoulder, his lollipop forgotten, stick poking my arm. Tires screeched and they sped off, taillights fading into the haze, abandoned. The words sank in as the dust settled, coating my skin. Max lifted his head, tears streaking his cheeks. "Why'd they go?" I knelt, setting him down gently, my knees grinding gravel. "They made a bad choice, buddy." But inside the cut was deep, severing ties and rage. The clerk poked his head out, brow furrowed. "Everything okay?" I nodded numbly, wiping Max's face with my sleeve, fabric rough. The desert stretched endless, but so did my resolve. Disowned, but free? Maybe. As the sun dipped, shadows lengthening, I held Max close, his sobs quieting. The formal cutoff was their rage manifest, but it cracked open something in me. A path forward, unseen yet. In the now, that truck's hum materialized into a battered pickup pulling in with a crunch. A woman stepped out, Sandra, though I didn't know it yet, her boots hitting dirt. But the memory's wound throbbed, the verdict's echo pushing me toward whatever came next. The wound from that verdict pulsed fresh as the pickup truck rolled to a stop, dust billowing around its tires like a shroud, and a woman in grease-stained overalls hopped out, her boots thudding solidly on the gravel. She shielded her eyes against the setting sun, squinting at us, me holding Max close, his face buried in my shirt, the clerk hovering awkwardly nearby with his phone still in hand. "You folks all right?" she called, her voice carrying over the wind, rough but kind, like sandpaper wrapped in warmth. I straightened, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand, my arm trembling from the weight of Max and the aftermath. This was it, the moment that cracked open the door to everything new, right when humiliation had me at my lowest, stranded, disowned, invisible no more but exposed in the worst way. Max peeked out, his eyes, red-rimmed, clutching his lollipop stick, like a talisman. The woman approached, her stride confident, tools clinking in her pocket, and up close I saw her name tag, Sandra, embroidered on her shirt, faded from washes. She took in the scene quick, the empty pump where the SUV had been, our lone backpack slumped against the wall, the clerk muttering about family troubles, her brow furrowed, lines deepening around her eyes, which were a warm brown, like coffee grounds. "Looks like you could use a hand," she said, kneeling to Max's level without hesitation, her knees popping softly. "Hey there, kiddo, what's your name?" Max mumbled. "Max," his voice muffled against my side, but she smiled, pulling a candy from her pocket, a mint wrapper crinkling as she offered it. He took it shyly, fingers brushing hers, and something in me eased, just a fraction. I cleared my throat, voice hoarse from the dust and tears I hadn't let fall. "My parents, they left us here. Argument." The words tasted bitter, my lips chapping in the dry air. Sandra stood, dusting her hands on her thighs, the fabric rough under her palms. "That's rough. I'm Sandra, run a shop down the road. Hop in, I'll get you somewhere safe." No questions, no judgment, just action. I nodded, scooping up the backpack, straps digging into my shoulder, and followed her to the truck, Max's hand in mine, his steps tentative. The truck door creaked open, a blast of cool air from the AC hitting us, mingled with the scent of oil and leather. I buckled Max into the middle seat, his booster from the backpack wedged in, seatbelt clicking secure. Sandra climbed in, key turning with a jingle, engine rumbling to life, strong, reliable, unlike the fragility I'd just escaped. As we pulled out, gravel crunching under tires, she glanced over. "You got skills? Look like you've been through the ringer, but something about you says fighter." Her words hung, and I hesitated, my fingers twisting the backpack strap in my lap. The desert blurred past, cacti silhouettes against the orange sky, and in that precise moment of deepest low, heart raw from abandonment, body aching from the heat, I let a sliver of my secret slip. I fix cars, self-taught. Nothing fancy." It was out, vulnerable, but her eyes lit up, a grin splitting her face. "No kidding? My shop's short-handed, brakes, engines?" I nodded, detailing a recent fix. The neighbor's transmission, how I'd diagnosed the slip from online forums, tools I'd improvised. She listened, nodding along, her hand tapping the wheel rhythmically. We drove maybe 10 minutes, the road winding through scrub brush, sun dipping lower, casting long shadows. Sandra shared bits. Her shop, a mom-and-pop garage in a tiny town, how she'd inherited it from her dad, grease under her nails since she was Max's age. "Folks like yours? I've seen 'em. Cut ties if they drag you down." Her voice was matter-of-fact, no pity, and it hit deep, my throat tightening. Max perked up, sucking on the mint, his legs swinging. "You fix cars too?" he asked her, voice brighter. She chuckled, a warm sound. "Every day, little man. Wanna see?" He nodded eagerly, and I felt tears prick. This stranger offering what my parents never had, interest without strings. The town appeared, a cluster of buildings, her shop at the edge. "Sandra's Auto." Sign weathered but proud. She parked, brakes squeaking softly, and led us inside, doorbell jingling. The garage smelled of rubber and metal, tools lined walls, a half-disassembled engine on a bench. She flipped on lights, fluorescents buzzing to life, and offered water from a cooler, bottles cold and dripping. I gulped mine, the chill soothing my parched throat, while Max explored, touching a wrench tentatively. "Careful," I warned, but Sandra waved it off. "Let him. Kids learn by doing." Then, spotting my grease-faint nails, she gestured to the engine. "Show me what you got. That alternator looks shot. Diagnose it." It was a test, but kind, her arms crossed loosely. Heart pounding? I approached, rolling up sleeves, fabric bunching at elbows, my hands steadied on the parts, fingers probing wires, recalling videos I'd watched endlessly. "Connections corroded, belt worn, replace both, should hum." She whistled low. "Spot on. You've got talent." The praise landed soft, unlike my parents' barbs, and in that recognition the scale of my secret success revealed itself. Not just fixes, but a path. "Stay here tonight," she said, pointing to a back room, cot, fridge. "Tomorrow? Work if you want. Pays fair, shelter included." I stared, bottle halfway to lips. "Why help?" She shrugged, wiping hands on a rag. "Been there, single mom once. Pay it forward." Night fell as we settled, Max on the cot, his dinosaur toy beside him, eyelids drooping. I tucked him in, blankets scratching my arms, whispering stories until his breaths evened. Sandra brought sandwiches, ham on rye, simple but filling, and we sat on crates, munching quietly. "Your skills could go far here," she said, biting into hers, crumbs falling. I nodded, the external shift crystallizing. Rescue not just physical but transformative. My hidden expertise, once a solitary shield, now a bridge to stability. As stars pricked the sky outside, visible through the grimy window, humiliation faded, replaced by possibility. Sandra's offer opened doors, work, home, a new beginning. Little did I know how deep it would root, but in that moment it changed everything. Back in the flow of memory's end, the rescue's warmth lingered, propelling me forward from the desert's edge. That propulsion from the desert's edge carried us straight into the heart of Sandra's world, where the garage's fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting a steady glow on the makeshift room we'd claimed for the night. Max was out cold on the cot, his chest rising and falling in even rhythms, the dinosaur toy tucked under his arm like a sentinel, while I sat on a rickety stool nearby, my back against the cool metal wall, phone in hand. The screen lit my face in the dimness, notifications pinging sporadically, texts from neighbors wondering where we'd vanished to, but nothing yet from my parents. Sandra had stepped out to close up the shop, her footsteps echoing faintly as she locked tools away, the clank of metal on metal a comforting routine. I'd thanked her again, words stumbling out, my hands gesturing vaguely at the space she'd offered without a second thought. She waved it off, rag dangling from her pocket. "Sleep on it, tomorrow's soon enough for decisions." But as the door clicked shut behind her, leaving me alone with Max's soft snores, the quiet amplified the buzz in my pocket. A call incoming, the number glaring, "Mom." I stared at it, thumb hovering over the green icon, my nail bitten short from stress. The ringtone vibrated through my palm, insistent, like her voice always was. News had spread fast in our small circle. Maybe the clerk had posted something online, or a mutual friend spotted the abandonment drama. Whatever it was, guilt had propelled them to this half-hearted outreach, not love. I let it ring twice more, my free hand clenching the stool's edge, wood splintering slightly under my grip. Finally, I answered, voice low to not wake Max. "What?" No hello, no pretense. My mother's intake of breath was sharp on the line, static crackling like the tension between us. "Kayla? Oh, thank God, we heard. Are you okay?" Her tone dripped with feigned concern, the kind she reserved for social media posts about family first. I stood slowly, pacing the small room, socks whispering on the concrete floor. The air smelled of oil and faint lavender from a plug-in Sandra had, a odd mix that grounded me. "Heard? From who?" I asked, keeping my voice even, though my heart hammered. Max stirred slightly, murmuring in his sleep, and I paused, watching him settle. My father chimed in, speakerphone of course, their voices overlapping. "Doesn't matter, we were worried. Come home, we'll talk." Worried? After ditching us in the desert like unwanted baggage? I leaned against the wall, shoulder pressing cold steel, and let out a slow breath, fogging the phone screen briefly. "Talk? Like how you talked at the gas station, disowning me, leaving Max to bake in the sun?" The hypocrisy burned, their scramble now that survival was public, reputations at stake. My mother sighed, dramatic as ever. We overreacted. The heat, the argument, you know how your father gets. Excuses, always. I could picture her, manicured nails tapping a table, pearl earrings swaying. My father grunted, "Just get back here, we'll sort the money thing." The money. Always circling back to that. I pushed off the wall, striding to the small window, peering out at the dark shop floor, tools shadowed like silent witnesses. "No," I said firmly, my fingers tightening around the phone, knuckles whitening. "You don't get to sort anything." Years of this, ignoring Max's milestones, belittling my jobs, making me beg for scraps while you flaunt vacations. My voice rose slightly, and I glanced at Max, lowering it again. The line went quiet, then my mother. "That's not fair. We've helped." I cut her off, words pouring out, each one a micro-release of pent-up cruelty they'd inflicted. "Helped? Like skipping his birth? Dismissing my cashier job while toasting your warehouse? Leaving us flooded and homeless because remodeling?" I ticked them off mentally, my free hand gesturing in the empty air, as if they could see the accusations. My father's voice hardened. "Watch it, Kayla, we're family." Family? The word twisted like a knife. I stopped pacing, standing still, toes curling against the cold floor. "Were, you said it yourself? Disowned? And now because word got out you're scrambling? Hypocrites." The label landed, satisfaction mingling with the ache. I heard my mother sniffle, crocodile tears, and my father mutter something about ungratefulness. "Come on, let's reconcile, for Max." Using him as leverage, classic. I shook my head, though they couldn't see, hair brushing my shoulders. "No, Max deserves better than your conditional love. We're done." The finality settled in my chest, a weight lifting even as tears pricked my eyes. I wiped them away with my sleeve, fabric rough on my cheek. They pleaded then, voices overlapping in a scramble, promises of change, offers of money now, guilt-laced apologies. "We didn't mean to leave you there," my mother said, her voice cracking artificially. "It was a mistake." Mistake? I thought of Max's terrified face, his hand in mine as dust clouded their departure. "Mistakes don't abandon kids in deserts," I replied, calm now, the storm inside quieting. My hand relaxed on the phone, grip loosening. Sandra's light flicked on outside, her silhouette moving. A reminder of real kindness. "Don't call again. Lose my number." I hung up before they could respond, the screen going dark, my reflection staring back, resolute. The phone buzzed immediately, texts flooding, "Please, think about it, we love you." Lies. I blocked the number, fingers swift on the screen, a digital door slamming. Silence enveloped the room, broken only by Max's breathing. I sank back onto the stool, elbows on knees, head in hands, fingers threading through my hair. The confrontation wasn't rage-fueled, it was measured, exposing their neglect layer by layer, the birthdays forgotten, pleas ignored, successes overshadowed. No screaming, just truth, calm and cutting. It felt powerful, flipping the script they'd written for me. Max mumbled in his sleep, rolling over, blanket rustling, and I moved to adjust it, tucking the edges snug. His face was peaceful, unmarred by their cruelty, and I kissed his forehead lightly, lips lingering. This was for him, shutting the door firmly, no cracks for their hypocrisy to seep through. Sandra knocked softly then, poking her head in. "Everything good?" I nodded, managing a small smile. "Yeah, just handling old business." She didn't pry, just nodded back. "Coffee in the morning? Get some rest." The door clicked shut, and I lay beside Max, his warmth seeping into me, the cot creaking under our weight. In that quiet aftermath, the rejection solidified, not vengeful but liberating. Their outreach, driven by guilt and optics, crumbled under my calm exposure. No reconciliation, just closure, on my terms. As sleep tugged the garage's hum lulling, I felt the shift. Forward, unburdened. That unburdened feeling wrapped around me like a blanket as morning light filtered through the garage's grimy windows, casting striped shadows across the cot where Max and I had slept. The hum of the place had lulled me into a fitful rest. Dreams tangled with dust and departures. But now, stirring awake, the scent of fresh coffee pulled me upright. Max was still curled up, his lashes fluttering in sleep, the dinosaur toy wedged under his chin, its plastic scales pressing faint marks into his skin. I stretched, my back popping from the thin mattress, and slipped out quietly, socks padding on the cold concrete floor. The rejection from last night's call lingered like a faint echo, but it didn't sting as sharp. Instead, it cleared space for what was unfolding here, in this unexpected haven. Sandra's voice carried from the main shop area, A low murmur mixed with the clink of mugs, and I followed it, pushing through the door with a soft creak. She was at a workbench, steam rising from 2 cups, her overalls already smudged with fresh grease, hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Tools were scattered around, an open engine block nearby, wrenches gleaming under the lights, and she looked up with a nod, sliding 1 mug toward me. "Black, right? Figured you for no frills?" Her smile was easy, crinkling the corners of her eyes, and I took the mug, the ceramic warm against my palms, fingers curling around it gratefully. "Thanks," I murmured, blowing on the surface, ripples forming in the dark liquid. The contrast hit me then, sharp as the coffee's bitterness on my tongue. Yesterday's abandonment, my parents' cold verdict in the desert heat, their voices laced with contempt and control. That had been biological ties, blood that ran thin when tested. Here, with Sandra, a stranger-turned-ally, it was chosen warmth, genuine and unasked for. I leaned against the bench, hip pressing the edge, and sipped slowly, the heat spreading through my chest. Sandra wiped her hands on a rag, the cloth stained and frayed, tucking it into her pocket before picking up her own mug. "Sleep okay? Kids still out?" She glanced toward the door, her tone casual but caring, like she'd done this before, offered shelter without strings. I nodded, setting the mug down with a soft thunk. "Yeah, he's tough, but last night, it was a lot." My voice caught slightly, and I cleared my throat, fingers tracing the mug's rim, the glaze smooth under my touch. She didn't push, just leaned back, arms crossing loosely, the fabric of her overalls rustling. "Wanna talk about it?" No judgment in her eyes, just open space, and something in me uncoiled. I started slow, words tumbling out about the road trip's barbs, the desert stop where they'd pronounced me disowned, leaving us like forgotten luggage. My hands gestured as I spoke, palms up in emphasis. Nails still faintly grimed from yesterday's grit. Sandra listened, nodding occasionally, her mug halfway to her lips, pausing mid-sip when I mentioned Max's scared face. As I finished, the air between us thickened with shared understanding, her expression softening. "That's heavy," she said quietly, setting her mug down, the base scraping wood. "My folks weren't much better. Kicked me out at 18 for getting pregnant, said I was a disappointment." She shrugged, but her fingers tightened briefly on the rag in her pocket, knuckles whitening for a second before relaxing. The vulnerability mirrored mine, bridging us, and I felt a pull, like threads connecting. "How'd you make it?" I asked, leaning forward, elbows on the bench now, the surface cool and sticky with faint oil residue. She chuckled softly, a warm sound that filled the space. "This shop, my dad left it to me, God rest him. And friends, chosen ones, who showed up when blood didn't." Her eyes met mine, steady and kind, and she reached over, patting my hand lightly, her calluses rough against my skin. The touch was brief, but it grounded me, a stark opposite to my mother's cold dismissals, her manicured hands never offering comfort. Max's voice piped up then, sleepy and calling from the back room. "Mommy?" And I straightened, but Sandra waved me off. "I'll get him. You finish that coffee." She moved with easy grace, disappearing through the door, and I heard her gentle tone. "Hey, little mechanic, ready for breakfast?" Max's giggle followed, pure and light, and they emerged hand in hand, his small fingers wrapped around hers, hair tousled from sleep. He beamed up at her, dinosaur toy dangling from his free hand, and my heart squeezed at the sight. Genuine care, no agenda. In contrast to my parents' toxic dinners where Max was an afterthought, ignored amid their boasts, this was real. Sandra hoisted him onto a stool, his legs swinging, and pulled out cereal from a cabinet, bowl clinking as she poured. "Milk?" she asked him directly, treating him like a person, not a prop. He nodded vigorously, spoon already in grip, and she poured, the liquid splashing softly. We sat together then, an impromptu family moment, the workbench, our table. I watched as Sandra showed Max a simple tool, a screwdriver, letting him turn it in his hand, explaining, "This fixes things like magic." His eyes widened, twisting it experimentally, the metal glinting. "Like Mommy does?" he asked, glancing at me, and I nodded, throat tight with emotion. Sandra's gaze flicked to mine, approving, and she ruffled his hair, strands fluffing under her palm. "Exactly. Your mom's got skills." The praise was simple, no backhand, unlike my father's grunts of disapproval. Memories flooded, the family dinners where my achievements were dismissed, forks clinking as they praised their business while I sat silent, Max fidgeting ignored. Here, it was warmth, Sandra sharing stories of her own son now grown, her voice animated, hands gesturing. He was your age when we rebuilt our first carburetor. Messy but fun. Max laughed, milk dribbling down his chin, and I wiped it with a napkin, paper crinkling, the action automatic but filled with new ease. As we ate, the conversation flowed natural, her questions about my fixes probing but encouraging. That transmission you mentioned, how'd you handle the clutch? She leaned in, genuinely interested, chin on hand. I explained, words gaining confidence, my spoon gesturing like a pointer. No condescension, just nods, her eyebrows raising in respect. Smart workaround. You could teach me a thing. The compliment landed soft, building me up where my parents tore down. Max chimed in with kid logic. Cars go vroom, and we both laughed, the sound echoing off the garage walls harmonious. This was the foundation. Sandra becoming chosen family, her support a bedrock against the biological chill. My mother's voice echoed in my head. You're nothing, but here, I was something, seen and valued. The moment stretched, coffee refilled, mugs steaming anew. Sandra sketched a quick diagram on a napkin, pen scratching paper, showing an engine tip, and Max colored over it with a crayon she'd found, his tongue poking out in concentration. I traced the lines with my finger, the ink smudging slightly, feeling included, part of a team. No toxic undercurrents, just genuine bonds forming, thread by thread. As the sun climbed higher, light brightening the shop, Sandra stood, stretching. Ready to work? Got a brake job waiting? I nodded, energized, helping Max down his bowl empty, spoon clattering. This heartfelt slice, coffee, stories, laughter, contrasted everything I'd known, proving chosen ties could heal where blood wounded. Sandra had become the anchor, her care the start of our new family. Sandra's anchor held firm through those first weeks. Her garage becoming our makeshift home, the clatter of tools, a steady rhythm that drowned out the echoes of abandonment. But as days blurred into a routine, me elbow-deep in engines by day, Max playing with scrap parts under Sandra's watchful eye, the emotional fallout from that desert verdict gnawed at me, a persistent ache that no wrench could fix. It wasn't just the sting of disownment, it was the lingering threads they still held, legal ties that could snag us back into their web if guilt or greed struck them again. I couldn't let that happen. One afternoon, after a morning spent torquing bolts on a customer's truck, my hands still slick with oil despite scrubbing, I sat at the workbench, staring at my phone's screen, a local lawyer's website glowing back. Sandra had mentioned her, a no-nonsense type who'd helped with her own family mess years ago. Protect what's yours, she'd said over lunch, passing me a sandwich, crust crunching as I took it. Now with Max napping in the back room, his soft breaths audible through the open door, I dialed the number, finger hesitating before pressing call, the plastic cool under my touch. The line clicked, a receptionist's voice crisp and efficient. Law offices of Elena Ramirez. How can I help? I cleared my throat, voice low to not wake Max, my free hand fiddling with a loose screw on the bench, rolling it between thumb and forefinger. I need an appointment, family law, severing ties, name change, wills. She booked me for the next day, her keyboard clacking in the background, and I hung up, heart pounding like an over-revved engine. Sandra poked her head in then, wiping sweat from her brow with her sleeve, fabric darkening. You okay? I nodded, pocketing the screw, its edges digging into my palm. Just building walls. She understood, her nod slow, and went back to work, leaving me to the quiet churn inside. That night, as Max brushed his teeth, toothpaste foaming at his mouth, mirror fogging from the sink's hot water, I explained simply, we're making sure no one can hurt us again. He rinsed, water swirling down the drain, and hugged me, his wet hands dampening my shirt. Like a fortress? I smiled, towel drying his hair, strands sticking up wildly. Exactly. The lawyer's office was a stark contrast to the garage, polished wood desks, files stacked neatly, the air scented with faint lemon polish instead of grease. I arrived early, Max in tow since Sandra had a big repair, his hand in mine as we climbed the steps, his sneakers squeaking on the tile lobby floor. Elena Ramirez greeted us, her handshake firm, rings cool against my skin, her suit tailored sharp. Kayla, come in. She led us to her office, door clicking shut softly, and gestured to chairs, the leather creaking as we sat. Max fidgeted with a toy car from his pocket, wheels spinning silently on the armrest. I laid it out methodically, words measured, my fingers interlacing in my lap, knuckles pressing together. The abandonment, the disownment, years of neglect, each detail recounted without tears, though my throat tightened when mentioning Max left in the dust. Elena listened, pen scratching notes on a yellow pad, the sound rhythmic, her eyes flicking up occasionally, expression neutral but attentive. "You want full separation," she confirmed, capping the pen with a click, leaning back, chair swiveling slightly. I nodded, glancing at Max, who was now rolling the car on his knee, focused. "Name change for both of us. Removal from any will or inheritance. Restraining order if needed." She outlined the steps, her voice steady, hands gesturing over forms she pulled from a drawer, papers rustling. First, the name change petition. Forms to fill, reasons to state, safety, fresh start. I scanned them, pen hovering, ink beating at the tip before I wrote, letters forming carefully. Preston, too. Hayes, I decided after Sandra's suggestion over breakfast, her spoon clinking her bowl as she nodded approval. It felt right, neutral ground. Max looked up. Hayes? Like a new adventure? I ruffled his hair, strands soft, and signed, the pen gliding smoothly. Elena notarized it, stamp thumping down, ink fresh and black. Next, the will, disclaiming inheritance. They're likely to contest, she warned, sliding another form, her nail tapping the signature line. I gripped the pen tighter, remembering their scrambled call, voices pleading over the line. Let them. My signature flowed, a decisive loop on the Y. Max watched, toy forgotten, his eyes curious but trusting. The emotional navigation deepened as we discussed protection, affidavits detailing the abandonment, potential for harassment. I recounted the desert again, voice steady but hands clenching the chair arms, fabric bunching under my fingers. Elena typed notes, keys clicking, screen reflecting in her glasses. We'll file for a no-contact order, cite child endangerment. Endangerment. The word hit hard, my breath kept. Max's hand slipped into mine then, small and warm, squeezing. It's okay, Mommy, I squeezed back, thumb rubbing his knuckles. Forms piled up, each one a brick in the fortress. Petitions, declarations, fees I covered with my first garage paycheck, bills crisp in my wallet. Elena explained timelines, court dates, publications for name change, and I nodded, absorbing, my foot tapping faintly under the desk, shoe sole scuffing carpet. As we wrapped, she stood, extending her hand again. This establishes boundaries, you're in control now. Control, a word my parents had wielded, now mine. I shook, grip firm and gathered the copies, papers crinkling in my bag. Outside, sun glaring off parked cars, Max skipped ahead, toy car vrooming in his hand. But inside, the fallout processed, each legal step a methodical untangling, emotions raw but channeled, relief mixed with grief, grieving the family that never was, my chest tightening as we walked. At the garage, Sandra met us, wrench in hand, grease streak on her cheek. How'd it go? I showed the forms, bag rustling. Fortress building, she grinned, high-fiving Max, palms slapping. Dinner that night, pasta boiling, steam rising, I reflected, fork twirling noodles. The steps weren't revenge, they were safeguards, new rules, no more access, no more pull. Max slurped, sauce dotting his chin, and I wiped it, napkin soft. Hayes, he practiced, giggling. I laughed too, the sound lighter. The process extended in micro moments, mailing forms the next day, envelope sealing with a lick, stamp pressing down, waiting for approvals, anxiety flickering but quelled by work, diagnosing a fuel pump, hands probing hoses. When the court notice arrived weeks later, envelope crisp, I opened it alone, paper slicing under my nail. Approved. I traced the judge's signature, ink faded slightly, tears blurring but wiped away quick. Max's name change followed, certificate arriving, his new ID a fresh start. Removing from the will, a letter to their lawyer typed carefully, keys clacking late night while Max slept. Their response came via mail, a curt acknowledgement, no fight, perhaps shame silenced them. I filed it away, drawer sliding shut with a thud. Each action built the fortress, boundaries not walls of hate, but shields of self-preservation. Emotional fallout navigated through tears in private, fists clenching pillows, but emerging stronger. Sandra's support anchored, her hugs brief but solid. Max adapted, his drawings now of new family, crayons scratching paper. The legal ties severed, I breathed freer, the desert's dust finally settling. With the dust settled and legal barriers firmly in place, the garage became more than a workplace. It transformed into a launch pad for the life I'd always envisioned. One where my mechanical skills weren't just survival tools, but instruments of real change. Months had passed since that first coffee with Sandra, her mug steaming beside mine, and now on a crisp morning with autumn leaves skittering across the lot outside, I stood at the workbench, blueprints spread before me, my hands tracing lines I'd drawn myself. The air hummed with the faint whir of a fan, mingling with the scent of fresh oil and metal, and Max was at school, his backpack heavier now with books from a better district we'd moved to, thanks to steady paychecks. Sandra had promoted me to lead mechanic, her trust a quiet nod during a busy afternoon, wrench passing from her hand to mine like a baton. But today, the primary event unfolding wasn't a repair. It was the birth of something bigger. A community program I'd conceived in quiet nights, lamplight casting shadows on notebook pages as I sketched ideas. Skills for single parents, I'd call it, teaching basic auto repairs to those like me, scraping by, one breakdown from disaster. The idea had rooted deep during a routine oil change weeks earlier, but it crystallized now as I prepared for the first session. I'd leveraged the stability Sandra provided. Regular hours, a small apartment above the garage, rent deducted fairly from my wage, and channeled my success into this. My fingers smoothed the blueprint's edges, paper crinkling under my touch, diagrams of engines simplified for beginners. I'd saved from every paycheck, envelope tucked in a drawer, bills folding neatly, to buy extra tools. Wrenches in sets, gloves in bulk, safety glasses stacked. Sandra had matched it, her contribution a stack of cash handed over with a grin. Invest in the future. Now the garage bay was cleared, cars pushed aside, mats unrolled on the concrete floor, their rubber scent fresh. I arranged stations, tools clinking as I set them down, each one a symbol of my reclaimed legacy. Not Preston, the name I'd shed like old skin, but Hayes, forged in resilience. The first participant arrived early, a woman named Lisa, her minivan sputtering into the lot, exhaust puffing blue. She stepped out, keys jangling in her hand, a toddler on her hip, his chubby fingers clutching her shirt. "Kayla, I'm here for the class," she said, voice tentative, eyes darting to the tools as if they were foreign artifacts. I wiped my hands on my overalls, fabric rough and extended one. "Welcome, you're the first." Her shake was firm but quick, her palm calloused from whatever jobs she juggled. We chatted as others trickled in. 5 in total, all single moms, their kids corralled in a play area Sandra had set up, toys scattering across a blanket. Lisa shared her story in snippets, words halting, car troubles draining her savings, late to work, bosses unforgiving. "Feels like I'm always one step from falling," she admitted, shifting her toddler to the other hip, his babble filling pauses. I nodded, mirroring her stance. My own memories surging, nights diagnosing my old junker by flashlight, Max asleep in the back seat. The session began with basics, my voice steady as I demonstrated, holding up a wrench, metal cool in my grip. "This is your power, learn it, and no breakdown owns you." They gathered around the demo engine, a salvaged block on a stand, its parts exposed like veins. I guided hands, Lisa's first, her fingers hesitant on the bolt, twisting slowly, the click of loosening echoing. "Feel that? Control." Her eyes widened, a small smile breaking, and she passed the tool to the next. Chain reaction of empowerment. Kids' laughter filtered from the corner, Max's old toys repurposed, blocks clacking. I moved between them, adjusting grips, explaining torque with simple analogies. Like twisting a jar lid but precise. Sweat beaded on my forehead, wiped away with a sleeve, as the morning warmed, sun slanting through open bays. Deeper into the event, conversations wove with actions, each turn of a screw unearthing stories. One woman, Maria, struggled with a filter, her nails chipped, frustration furrowing her brow. "I can't," she muttered, tool slipping. I knelt beside her, knee on the mat, and guided without taking over, my hand over hers, steady pressure. "You can," breathed through it. It loosened, oil dripping controlled, and she exhaled, shoulders dropping. My ex left us with a lemon car, bills piling. I shared a piece of mine. The desert, briefly, without details, voice low. "I rebuilt from nothing. You will too." Nods rippled. A collective understanding, hands resuming work, clinks sinking like a heartbeat. Max arrived midday, school bus rumbling outside, his backpack thumping as he ran in, eyes lighting at the group. "Mommy's teaching." He joined the kids, organizing a game, his leadership natural, a far cry from the scared boy in the dust. Sandra popped in, coffee thermos in hand, steam curling, offering breaks. "Looking good," she whispered, patting my back, her touch affirming. The session peaked with a group fix, a mock tire change, women rotating positions, laughter bubbling as a lug nut rolled away, chased and caught. Lisa nailed the jack placement, her toddler clapping pudgy hands. "I did it," she beamed, standing taller, grease smudging her cheek like a badge. The next morning dawned clear, sky a vast blue expanse as I loaded the car, our reliable sedan now, tuned by my own hands, engine purring smoothly when I turned the key. Max stayed with Sandra, his hug tight around my waist, small arms squeezing, face pressed into my shirt. "Be safe, Mommy," he murmured, and I knelt, cupping his cheeks, thumbs brushing soft skin. "Always, buddy, this is the last piece." Sandra stood by, arms crossed loosely, her nod encouraging, hand patting my shoulder briefly, calluses familiar. The drive stretched hours, highway blurring into familiar suburbs, my hands gripping the wheel at 10 and 2, knuckles paling slightly on turns. Memories flickered like roadside signs, their house looming manicured lawn, the boutique's sign glowing in town. My stomach churned, not with fear but anticipation, a fist clenching low in my gut. The envelope on the passenger seat held it all. Court orders, name change certificates, the disclaimer of inheritance, papers crisp and official, seals embossed. Their driveway crunched under tires as I pulled in, the sound gravelly, engine idling a moment before I cut it, silence rushing in. The house looked unchanged, white siding pristine, curtains drawn slightly as if hiding. I grabbed the envelope, paper crinkling in my grasp, and stepped out, boots thudding on pavement. My heart beat steady, breaths even as I approached the door, knuckles rapping firmly, the wood vibrating under my touch. Footsteps inside, muffled, then the door swung open, my mother there, her eyes widening, hand flying to her pearl necklace, fingers twisting the strand. "Kayla?" Her voice cracked, surprise etching lines deeper around her mouth. Behind her, my father appeared, newspaper folding in his hands, edges creasing sharply as he set it down. "What are you doing here?" His tone gruff, but uncertainty flickered in his gaze, avoiding full eye contact. Shifting to the envelope instead. I didn't step inside, planting feet firm on the welcome mat, its bristles rough under soles. "Not Kayla Preston anymore," I said calmly, voice level, holding out the envelope without tremor. My mother took it hesitantly, nails manicured as ever, scraping lightly on the paper as she opened it. My father's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching as he peered over her shoulder, glasses slipping down his nose. He pushed them up with a finger, the gesture abrupt. Documents spilled into her hands, pages fluttering slightly in the breeze, and she scanned them, lips parting in a soft gasp. "Name change? To Hayes? And this? Disclaiming our will?" Her eyes lifted, meeting mine briefly before darting away, fingers clenching the paper's crumpling edges. I stood taller, shoulders squared, feeling the sun warm on my back. Complete separation. No ties left. "You disowned us in the desert. This makes it official." My words hung, deliberate. No anger lacing them, just fact. My fist unclenching at my side, fingers flexing open. They scrambled then, postures shifting, my mother stepping forward, free hand reaching but not touching, palm hovering. "We didn't mean. It was a mistake. Come in, let's talk." Her voice pleaded, necklace twisting tighter, pearls indenting skin. My father cleared his throat, hand rubbing his chin, stubble rasping. "Yeah, water under the bridge. Max, our grandson needs family." The hypocrisy surfaced again, their eyes pleading now, not commanding. But I saw the guilt, the fear of finality. I shook my head slowly, hair brushing shoulders. "Max has family, chosen, real. Sandra, the mechanic who rescued us, she's been more parent than you ever were." My voice steady, I detailed it without rush, the garage home, my promotions, the program helping single moms, each word a micro-reveal of my world without them. My mother's face paled, hand dropping, fingers limp. "But we're blood," she whispered, papers trembling in her grasp. "Blood?" The word echoed hollow. I met her gaze directly, no avoidance, my eyes unblinking. "Blood that abandoned a 6-year-old in the heat, blood that ignored births, milestones, please." My father shifted weight, foot scuffing the threshold, gaze dropping to his shoes, laces neatly tied. "We overreacted," he muttered, hand clenching into a fist at his side, then opening as if releasing something. But I pressed on, calm wave after wave. "This isn't about forgiveness. It's proof. You're erased from our lives. No calls, no claims. We're free." The envelope's contents detailed it all, seals stamping finality, and as they absorbed, shoulders slumping. My mother's subtly, father's more rigid. I felt the internal shift. a realization blooming deep. My worth wasn't in their validation, never had been, it was internal, forged in desert dust, secret studies, rebuilt engines, Max's smiles. Freedom wasn't just legal, it was soul deep, a peace settling like calm after a storm, my breaths deeper, chest expanding. They tried once more, my mother extending the papers back, hand shaking, voice soft. Please, reconsider, for old times. Old times? Flashbacks flickered, ignored drawings, dismissed jobs, flooded apartments, but they didn't wound, they affirmed. I took the papers gently, tucking them under arm, paper whispering against fabric. Old times are why this is necessary. My father looked up then, eyes meeting mine fully, a flicker of regret, but he said nothing, jaw clenching, Adam's apple bobbing in a swallow. I turned, steps measured back to the car, envelope secure, their door clicking shut behind, a soft finality, engine starting with a turn of key, hum reliable. I backed out, driveway gravel crunching, farewell. The drive home blurred, but inside, reflection deepened. This journey, from abandonment to confrontation, had stripped illusions, revealing self-worth as inherent, the lout not bestowed. Peace flooded, warm and true, as suburbs faded to highway, wind whistling through cracked window. Arriving at the garage, sun setting orange, Sandra waited, Max in her arms, his wave enthusiastic. I parked, door opening with a creak, and hugged them, Max's laughter bubbling, Sandra's pat solid. The confrontation closed the chapter, but the realization, worth internal, freedom mine, ushered peace, enduring and profound. Have you ever felt trapped by the expectations of those who should love you unconditionally, only to realize that true freedom comes from within? I know I have, and sharing this story has been my way of turning pain into power. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop your own experiences in the comments below. Have you cut toxic ties? Found your worth on your own terms? Let's build each other up. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. Your support means the world, and helps spread this message further. Remember, you're not defined by where you came from, but by the strength you build along the way. You've got this. Go claim your peace.